Thank you very much for the introduction, and I'm delighted to be back at this, my very favorite conference again, and delighted to be able to speak here again. And I'm a little nervous because I have not given this presentation before, so it's a very new research I'm doing, so I hope you'll be nice to me. Today I'm going to talk to you about something that has been happening in the Estonian media more recently over the past few years. So this has been quite negative media coverage of veganism. And so I tried to understand this a little bit more, and particularly to understand how is veganism depicted in relation to children, children's health and vegan parenting in Estonia. And to look at what kind of argumentation and language is used in the media, what kind of emotions are appealed to when veganism is depicted in relation to children's health. And I I'm using this idea of moral panic, this term, and I think that here we have a case of moral panic that is being constructed in the media. I'm going to talk about that very soon. And also at the end, I'm going to say a little bit about what vegans and vegan organizations can actually do to counter these kinds of negative depictions of veganism, like by giving you some examples of what we have been doing in the vegan society. And I think it is really important to understand better negative media coverage of veganism and kind of dominant representations of veganism, so that we as vegans and organizations can challenge it in better ways. So just a few words about veganism in Estonia to give you a little bit of context. So this is a relatively new phenomenon. Because of historical, social and cultural reasons, veganism really wasn't around until quite recently. And I can say that it emerged along with the rise of animal rights ideas and the movement, and it's been around and more visible since around mid-2000s. And at the moment we are a very small country with a population of 1.3 million, and we've got 3 animal rights organizations, and also Vegan Society, which I'm a member of since 2012, and we've really been increasingly present in the media. And so veganism and animal rights have been depicted in the media quite a lot. We find it quite easy to get in the media, even into mainstream media outlets, because we're such a small country. So for instance, there's been cases of mistreatment of animals in pig and chicken farms, and veganism has been discussed in relation to health, consumption, celebrities. And there's something else that I have to mention here, and this is concerning how the mainstream nutrition and medical establishment views veganism. This is something I presented here last year, and so this establishment condemns veganism. So there are very negative attitudes last year presented on the Estonian nutrition recommendations. And now this is coming out as a book chapter. I really recommend that book. So this coming out very soon. It's 2 volumes, and by David Niebert, who is the editor, and it's called Animal Oppression and Capitalism. So check it out. Very interesting contributions here. So about this little research I've been doing and what I'm presenting here today. So these are media articles related to veganism, children's health and parenting, and I excluded other articles which focused on, for instance, the introduced recipes or consumption, and also I didn't look at blog entries or other articles by the Vegan Society that we wrote as a response and published on our pages as well. And also there were some kind of responses by people related to the society. So now what I'm looking at now is really like articles that appeared by kind of mainstream journalists in the main media outlets. And this is kind of representing the consensus regarding this issue in Estonia. I searched the words veganism, plant-based diet, vegans, vegan children in Estonian, in the Estonian language, in Google search, as well as on the websites of the major daily newspapers. And so I came up with 12 articles, and actually most of them, they got circulated later on. They're getting like republished in different portals and websites. And the articles are from 2014 to 2017. And also like shortly about the kinds of articles. So what are they, how you can sort of divide them. So some of them were like short news articles and they were translated from the foreign media. And the others, the bulk of it, were original articles by Estonian journalists. And there, the main voice was that journalist who was the author of article reporting or telling a story. And then there were secondary voices who were prominent doctors and nutritionists. And and then also sometimes comments were taken from the Estonian Vegan Society and a vegan blogger in one instance. And in one case, the journalist had secretly gone to a vegan Facebook group and reported what she found there. And in these articles, in this latter group, it is difficult to really distinguish the voices of the doctors and the nutritionists who spoke there from the journalists who wrote the articles. So that has to be kept in mind. I wanted to just shortly remind us a little bit about the role of media, particularly in social change. So how does the media function? So it is not really reflecting reality. Not only reflecting reality, but we should really see the role of media as actively reconstructing and representing reality. And also, it's important to keep in mind about media representations that they are always selective and they aim to produce a certain kind of discourse, which is like a certain representation of reality, which is trying to dominate over others. And also about facts. So they are actually always choices and they are always presented by someone and from a very particular viewpoint. So we do have always someone's interests represented. And also in the media, we have got dominant social and economic values that are quite overrepresented. So we also know that the mass media, it really tends to be quite conformist and it really avoids largely, as a general tendency, avoids criticizing key institutions such as business. And we know also that the mass media is not equally available to all groups and their interests. And we are now in this, what has been termed the post-truth era, and there are particular challenges to journalism in this time. So for instance, there is no trust or little trust in facts, and there are a lot of like half-truths and there's a lot of false information, and we have heard about confirmation bias and echo chambers. So there's a lot of what is happening is that there are opinions, and then we sort of find facts to conform those opinions, to get confirmation on those opinions. So there's sort of opinion and then evidence comes after that. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about my main findings. First, I'm going to show you some of the language used in the headlines. So this is purely the headlines of these articles, which I've translated from the Estonian language into English here. Okay, so long-term veganism is a great health risk. Veganism slows the growth of a developing child. Vegan mother convicted of causing health damage to child. Vegetarians and vegans at risk of infertility. Vegan children hospitalized with cramps and life-threatening anemia. Veganism may cripple a child. Child on a vegan diet taken away from parents. Children forced on a vegan diet. Starving a baby. Doctors fight for life of a baby of strict vegans. Okay, so when you look at this language, so when you look at these titles, we see that they're talking about some very extreme behaviors, very serious, and there is, deliberate harm here and cruelty, and even criminality. So people wanting to intentionally harm children. So this language really conveys fear, risk, panic, anxiety. It's very scandalous. It's quite visible from these titles. So now going on into this article, so what was there? And I tried to kind of make like a typology, or it's a kind of a scheme of what were the main representations of veganism and vegans, or what were vegans compared to, like what are other groups in society. And this is quite interesting to look at as well. So veganism was seen as one way of seeing it in the articles as a belief or conviction. And here there's a German doctor who is quoted in this article who says that, that this doctor recently attempted to advise a mother of 3 who gave her children only plant-based food. And so this doctor said, I drew attention to the dangers of this diet. And this mother just said, Jesus also didn't eat meat, as he recalled. So yeah, veganism really kind of equated as if it was a belief. So this is also a very interesting depiction. So veganism was seen as an alternative medical practice or some kind of therapy, which was really like unscientific, and it was associated with conspiracy theories. For instance, there was another recent kind of scandal which reached the media in Estonia of a group of people who were drinking chlorine dioxide. So so they, in some of the articles, vegans were compared to this group, and so for instance, I'm reading out the second quote here by the journalist. Just like the chlorine dioxide community, radical vegans are also characterized by total lack of trust of doctors. So also this sort of really associating vegans with like anti-science views and esoterics, like this last quote, a vegan woman, well, this was in a Facebook group, claimed that fruitarians never get sunburned. So, right, so in the next one, it's sort of like related, particularly like that last one can also be maybe grouped under this category, depicting vegans as misinformed or gullible or really lacking critical thinking. This is what was written in the article. The mother under investigation thought that vitamins are not necessary because someone on the internet had said that vitamin D and meat are not necessary for babies. So this is an interesting view of vegans here. So also veganism was depicted as a cult, like a kind of cult. And again, this was the example, it was compared to these chlorine dioxide drinkers. So the Facebook vegan group that we observed has similar rules to the notorious chlorine dioxide group, where those who disagree are not tolerated and those who make critical posts are soon removed from the group. Also, it was seen as a fad, so like some kind of fashion trend that just comes and goes. So really compared to, so here it said, veganism is not the only dangerous or useless alternative practice that family doctors encounter. We have always had this phenomena. So this doctor is quoted who has worked as a doctor for almost 20 years. So just like trends in fashion, there are also trends in behavior, she noted. From recent past, she recalls homeopathy, different diets, a surge in the popularity of food supplements, and deep colon cleansing. Also quite an interesting comparison here, that veganism is grouped together with these practices. Also, veganism was seen as a social problem. So this is here compared to smoking and obesity, and said here that children fed a vegan diet, it's not yet a large-scale problem in Estonia, not at least to this, as compared to smoking and obesity. Also, this is another quite worrying depiction, vegans as criminals. So this sentence here, the parents had a vegan background. So compare this, the vegans had a criminal, the parents had a criminal background. So really like kind of drawing these parallels here. Then this sentence, US parents killed their child with strict veganism. They were given life sentences. And then the last one here, legally, the mother committed a crime, but she received her punishment in another way, as fear for the life of her child. I agree with the prosecutor that the state does not anymore need to punish this person. So yeah, criminals who need to be potentially punished. Okay, so these were what I identified, the kind of main ways of depicting vegans and veganism. And kind of bringing in this idea of post-truth. So Oxford Dictionary has defined it as relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. So we can clearly see that actually these articles, I'm going to show that in the following slides, they did not really rely on scientific evidence, or they really simply disregarded it. And they really presented a number of false claims, and they were really infused with personal beliefs of the authors. So like some ways in which veganism was sort of misrepresented in relation to health and children's health. So here in the first quote there's a quite prominent Estonian nutritionist who is saying, nutrition studies conducted in the last decade have found that young women who do not consume animal protein risk becoming infertile. So there's no evidence provided in that article. So this sounds extremely worrying and scary, what she says here. And here a prominent children's doctor says that a long-term plant-based diet causes health damage to children and can even be life-threatening to very small children. Okay, and very interestingly also there were some kind of ideas, representations of veganism that I found very curious. So for instance, that first one here. According to pediatricians, children should receive breast milk for at least 6 months, but many vegan mothers equate drinking breast milk with animal-based foods and therefore seek a replacement food. These are usually artificial milk formulas or soy milk, which is plant-based. So here, kind of having this idea that vegans think that human breast milk is not vegan. Personally have never encountered such vegans, but these doctors, journalists, seem to be thinking that this is what most of us think. Okay, and then this other doctor here is saying that there are 2 types of radical vegan mothers. The first are those who avoid confrontation with doctors and promise to give meat to their children, but actually do not. Others boldly declare that they will never give their child anything that contains meat and iron. So this is also very strange. In many ways, also here thinking that, just no vegan food contains iron, or as if they're really trying to avoid giving iron to their children for some reason. This remains a bit unclear. And here actually there's one kind of nutritional term that is used is this essential amino acid that they are kind of saying here that it's really impossible to get this from plant foods. And sort of also saying that, for instance, eating too much protein, fiber is bad for you. So these kinds of things are being said in articles. But also what is happening here are some really serious methodological problems. So for instance, generalizing from single cases and really the lack of any statistics or comparisons and of course no representative samples. So what happens really is like a very grave incident is reported, some child being very sick from veganism or almost dying, and then 1 or 2 cases are cited. And actually what also we know that in some of these articles, the same case has been just used, And then conclusions are made, generalizations are made about all vegan children. I've got some examples here. So for instance here, years ago, I treated a vegan child about 6 months old. He was admitted to hospital and diagnosed with very low B12 levels, says a doctor from Tallinn Children's Hospital. And the next one, the same doctor says that 2 children have had neurological damage due to veganism. 1 had cramps. And so the last one, I remember one case where I felt I was in a very bad situation. The family was otherwise very caring and they had 2 children, a 6-year-old and a 1-year-old, said the doctor. Veganism had come to them suddenly, which is also this kind of, it was a religion or something, like they had this sudden revelation. At the time, the mother was expecting the 2nd child. The child had already developed anemia. The parents categorically refused to follow any of our advice. So you can clearly see the problems here with these representations. And also, there's no comparison to omnivore children, but we do know, like every year in Estonia, there are children who are diagnosed with anemia and lack of vitamin D, and that statistic is from 2015. And these numbers, something with 2,000 might seem small, but also remember how small our population is. And these are just the diagnosed cases. So what are the solutions that these articles, that these journalists are proposing, really? So what should we do? So what they are saying, okay, we should talk to vegan families. We should deal with them somehow. So what are they saying? So also there's that talk of maybe reporting to child services, and the doctors there's no like established practice about that, and they are sort of a bit unsure when and how they should do that. So here, this doctor is saying, concerning the last case, we discussed with other doctors what to do. Should we report to child services or not? We have previously done it, but seen that it's of no use. The only thing we can do is to talk to the parents endlessly, and there are no other means. And this other doctor here in the second quote is saying actually that, yeah, we should deal with the vegan families already when they are, expecting a child or planning to have a child. So afterwards, it's too late, he says. And this nutritionist says also that information, scientific research and facts that doctors give are not enough to convince vegan parents. Everything that you say to them goes in one ear and comes out the other, because when they feel well, they think everything is okay. You can tell them all about the evidence and vitamins. They won't accept this information. So you have to, talk a lot to the vegan parents, deal with them. But what does this actually mean, so that talking to the vegan families? Apparently it actually means that the aim is to convince them to give the children meat. So, yeah, in the first quote, the parents promised to engage in adequate cooperation with the medical staff. So let's see what they actually mean by that. There is now the second quote I'm reading. The boy, a boy who was critically ill, the boy is now 2.5 years old and has been under constant supervision of doctors. His vitals are now normal, and his diet also includes meat. So yeah, now there's the solution has been reached. So the boy, he's okay and he's eating meat. So everything is fine. And the third one, there are also positive examples. Vegans who give meat to their child, they understand that in order to grow and develop, the child also needs animal-based foods. And now the last one, I think that's particularly curious. So this suggestion, I don't know if you have that in your countries. I think probably not, but in Estonia we do. So this doctor is saying 6-month-old children should eat meat every day. Meat contains essential amino acids and iron, which children need more compared to adults. On a couple of weekdays, it is okay if the meat is replaced with eggs and milk, but generally, meat should be included in the menu every day. So basically, this is the solution that they propose. So that's what we should do. And also, there's even being that kind of idea of perhaps taking, children away from vegan families. It hasn't really happened, but I think that given these views, there's a real danger. And here, there's it's not a doctor, but somebody from the police. He says that the court doesn't need to remove parental rights completely, but can give orders to parents. For example, to give decision-making rights to the other parent or the grandparents. We have legal opportunities to intervene, but to think about it practically, will the judge come to fry meat for these families? There is no quick and simple solution. So yeah, they really don't know what to do. Yeah. And I want to be really completely fair. Like when I present this, it sounds really awful. Is it really like that? And so I really looked at the articles very closely. Is there anything positive that is said about veganism? And I did find in 2 articles they talk about there's a kind of like a subsection on some which is titled Positive Aspects of Veganism, and they talk about some benefits of plant-based diets to health. But the thing is that they just constantly emphasize that this really applies to adults only. Like we can't really have vegan children. So it's about the health of adults. And they're talking about how particularly in, our societies, welfare societies where we have overconsumption and people eat, junk foods, that veganism indeed might be good, to prevent some diseases, reduce blood pressure, help, with type 2 diabetes and other things. And, kind of highlighting some benefits like lighter food, or maybe you can lose weight or something. So these were the things that I found in the articles, just to be fair. So when we look at, so what kind of message do these articles send to vegans and to others? And I think it's quite clear. So we get the message that veganism is damaging to health, and it is particularly unsuitable and even life-threatening to children. We can only think about what does it mean for vegan parents or those vegans who are planning to become parents. So really demonizing vegans, and particularly vegan parents and mothers. I've got a slide coming up about how these depictions are gendered too. And even I could say that, this is really dehumanizing vegans. And this idea of moral panic that I want to come to now. So I think that these articles are really producing moral panic. So what is moral panic? I'm here relying on the sociologist Stanley Cohen, who came up with this term and who wrote about it. So he said, so the definition according to him is that moral panic occurs when a condition, episode, person or groups of people, when they emerge to become defined as a threat to social values and interests. And so there's basically this moral panic is like there's concern emerging over an issue. So usually it's often done via mass media. And also about moral panics, they often centered on people who are marginalized in society. Usually they're marginalized due to their ethnicity or gender or class or race or something else. And but veganism, I think we can also kind of add to this list here based on this case. So as such, the moral panic often draws on known stereotypes and it reinforces them. And so moral panics, it's been identified. Several kinds of moral panics have been identified, for instance, in relation to gay rights, Islam, Muslims, also asylum seekers. But I haven't encountered yet, using the concept, kind of applying it to veganism, which I'm doing here. And who benefits from this moral panic? So, of course, those who are in power, so they ultimately benefit from it, since they can sort of have better control over the population by spreading this moral panic and can reinforce their authority. And for the media, it's really particularly nowadays important too, because if you report on threats that then become moral panics, it increases viewership and you can make money for your news organization when the articles are shared. And also for the state, it is sort of beneficial because this creation of moral panic can give the state cause to enact legislation and laws that would seem illegitimate without the perceived threat at the center of the moral panic. So this is a lot of information on this slide, but I'm going to go through it. So there are some classic components of a moral panic. And I kind of want to see whether this case, what I talked about, this depiction of veganism in Estonian media in relation to children, so is this a case of moral panic? And I would say yes, because it does apply to, it really, so all these criteria apply here. So there's concern. There's the first, there's some kind of reported event, that sparks anxiety. So definitely here, vegan parents are seen as depriving their children of animal products, and so there's, they are seen as causing very serious and irreparable health damage to children. Okay, so hostility is the second one. So these perpetrators are portrayed as folk devils, and a folk devil is a person or group of people who are portrayed in the folklore or in the media as outsiders or somehow deviant, and who are blamed for crimes or other kinds of social problems. So maybe like scapegoats. So definitely there's hostility, as we saw in the articles, towards vegans, and particularly towards this group, vegan parents, and particularly mothers. So the third one, consensus. So this negative reaction is broad and unified. So medical and nutrition professionals whose voices are heard in those articles, and the journalists who write them in these newspapers. So they clearly say that veganism is dangerous, and particularly for children, and it must not be allowed and tolerated. And also there's consensus that vegan parents are irresponsible if they force veganism on their children. So next one, disproportionality. So this is the extent of the threat that this threat poses. This is exaggerated. So as we see, there's no statistics presented, and there's no comparison with omnivore children. So they're leaving the impression that all vegan children are at a serious risk. And this is, of course, a very selective and biased coverage. And finally, volatility. So the media's reporting and the associated panic emerge suddenly, but also can dissipate quickly. And actually these articles appear in sort of waves. So there were some in November 2015, there were several that appeared, and then also in the period of April to August 2017. And I cannot exactly explain why at those times, but I know that one factor has been the activities of the Vegan Society, what we've been doing or what we've been writing in our blog, and sometimes it gets to the mainstream media and it's seen as a threat, or also our communication with the state authorities regarding, for instance, kindergarten menus and things like that. So I think that I have reason to suspect that the articles are sometimes published as a reaction to these activities that we do. And I kind of want to also argue that this kind of part that veganism is seen as a threat to social values and interests. So clearly there are political dimensions to this panic, but they are not explicitly articulated, but they're really present there. And I am wondering, really, is that panic only and purely about children's health and diet? And I would say not. For instance, how can we know that? So when we think about, is there concern over other diets? For instance, maybe you've heard there's that Atkins diet, or that low carb, high fat diet, and it's also gaining popularity in Estonia. For instance, there are like Facebook groups, and people are talking there. They are asking advice. Also, some parents are talking about about their children's health and relating it to that diet. So there's no such moral panic about this. Also, there's nothing about overweight children. And so there's one doctor is saying here that veganism excludes from the menu a number of very important foods: milk products, meat, eggs, fish, and honey. And this is seen as a concern. But let's compare it to this low-carb, high-fat diet. And actually, the excluded food groups, they are big, and there's actually a lot more elimination going on. For instance, all carbohydrates like grain, no fruits, and also this diet is very high in animal protein and animal fat. And actually, we do know that the vegan diet corresponds better to even the mainstream food pyramid than, for instance, that low-carb diet. And also, we have analyzed with the Vegan Society some kindergarten menus, like the ones that are presently used, omnivore menus, and we have compiled vegan menus. And so these latter ones actually correspond better to nutrition requirements. And also, it's not entirely about health, because there's this discussion about imposing a sugar tax in Estonia, but it is seen as really impeding our freedom of choice. So therefore, there's reason to assume that this attack on veganism is political, and particularly the case of children and parenting, it's seen as challenging, threatening our established norms and our social order, where we rely on meat and dairy, our carnist ideology, and the animal industrial complex. I'm sort of running a bit out of time, and there's also that idea how this moral panic is gendered. So there's a lot of talk about vegan mothers who are particularly harming their children by giving them vegan food, and also there's a kind of quote about how adolescent girls who go vegan, they can risk infertility, things like that. And really men are very largely missing from these vegan parenting discourses. And okay, kind of to come to the very final part, I've got a few more slides. So what if we kind of think about this media depiction as showing veganism as a moral panic? So what does it help us to do? Why is it useful? So for instance, it really helps us to see how this panic in question is socially constructed, at least to a large extent. And it really helps people to more rationally evaluate the basis of their fears and maybe become more critical readers of the media. And we also can take a more historically informed look at it to see it in the context of some other collective fears and anxieties that we've had regarding very new phenomena, which are first, when they appear, often they are seen as a threat to our established values and interests and safety of the society. So finally, just a few things. So what have we done? I mean, this is not an exhaustive list, and surely you've got maybe good ideas about that too, what can be done. But so one thing we've done is, we continue to do, is really providing very compact and easily accessible information on veganism. When we have got it in our kind of web page, in blog posts, then we try to really include links to scientific studies. Although we do know that those who don't think that veganism is viable, they often disregard, or they can just say that this is, not convincing. But then we still want to put this evidence out there. Like, it's important for it to be there, and there will be people who find it. So, for instance, this is like a sort of vegan eating on one page, so everything you need to know about this. So we recently published that. And we really emphasize the need to take B12, and particularly in our Nordic kind of climate, vitamin D. And we try to sort of always be science-based and distance ourselves from esoterics. We do respond, and sometimes in detailed ways, to very skeptical and misinformed articles about veganism. And we try to really identify, and we try to challenge these misconceptions. And we often sort of send this to newspapers, our kind of responses, and sometimes they can get published, and we circulate them in the social media. And we also name names, so we decided that we should actually name those doctors and these organizations who are hostile towards veganism, so maybe that gets their attention to what we are saying. We try to be knowledgeable about the legal rights of vegans. Generally, like, there's a lot of stuff going on in EU, but also, so what are actually our rights? And we try to follow court cases. And it's not something that we've sort of pursued a lot, that kind of idea of discrimination of vegans, but it's something that we want to do more in the future. And we actually, this is what I recommend, and we were able to do that. So we have started dialogue with some skeptical and misinformed nutritionists and doctors and journalists. And we have invited them, we started to do that, to public discussions on veganism. So this picture is taken this August. There was something like an opinion festival taking place in Estonia, in a small town, and we organized a panel discussion on the vegan diet, and we brought foreign experts there as well. And there on the left there you see two doctors. So on the one of them, the one more on the right, is the most skeptical. She was quoted a lot in these articles, and she actually turned up and she debated with these other doctors. So this was, I think, a good thing to do. And yeah, we tried to do this. And just to finish, I had a little bit of fun too when I was analyzing this, because apparently it turns out there's a related moral panic. So vegans are not only forcing veganism on children, but also they are forcing it on innocent cats and other companion animals. So there's also articles on that, like a new madness. Vegans are forcing veganism on their pets. So yes, maybe I have got a new topic for my next research. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. We have about 10 minutes for questions. Who wants to start over there?
Hello, Kadri. My name is Liisa Indra. I'm also from Estonia. Thank you for this interesting slideshow. I just wanted to add that there are also positive aspects that have been in media, and vegan families, myself included, have been in the past 4 months several times in Pere ja Kodu, Pere ja Laps, which are magazines in Estonia, like Family and Home, Family and Children. And both editors from these magazines are really, really friendly and are vegans themselves. And also in radio, I know at least 2 shows where I've been telling about veganism, where media representatives really want to find a way to find people who have had positive impact. Because, as you said, the negative impacts have been so much covered. So hopefully the positive aspects find their way out there too more. But here, I just wanted to say that it's not only bad in Estonia.
Yeah. Thanks for that comment. I mean, this is really important that there's more that is talked about veganism. I just had the newspaper articles. I didn't include like radio shows, and there's myself have also been in some kind of radio shows and even on TV. Like maybe there's a vegan picnic or some kind of fun vegan things doing, but. I kind of wanted to focus on really on this like very kind of medical side of it, like how is that depicted? Like I think often maybe in these other like articles and media appearances, there's maybe a broader focus, and veganism is presented maybe like in a kind of in connection with food mostly. But it's definitely important to highlight that there are some journalists who are trying to find other angles and that kind of trying to maybe have a more balanced view or highlight other aspects about veganism.
Hello, thank you very much for this presentation. It was very interesting. I'm from a neighboring country, from Poland, and I'm very, very, very surprised by these articles. We do get some negative articles in Poland, but nothing like that. My main question would be how many vegans you have in Estonia and how many problems did children have? Because when I researched internet a few years ago when my daughter was very small, I just found few extreme cases around the world. So few from America, few from Australia, nothing from Estonia. So I expect your population is very small, so vegan population must be even smaller. So it's very, very surprising for me that you have articles saying that children have some problems, because I know many vegans, many in UK, many in Poland, and I don't know one single vegan child who have health problems.
Yeah, an important question. Actually, we get asked in the society too. So how many vegans are there in Estonia? And we can never really say like what is that number, because we don't really have statistics at the moment. We do know that the number of, I think there was some kind of statistics by the state authorities on the number of vegetarians, which included vegans, and this is less than 1%. We do not know. And regarding the cases, so yes, there's been one or two cases, and this is also, as I said, in some of these articles, the same case, gets cited all over again, and then conclusions are made on, to other all vegan children. So really, yes, there have been a few cases where, very few vegan children that have been diagnosed have lacked some nutrients and vitamins, but of course there have been many, many more omnivore children with the same problems, but they never, get turned into a scandalous media story. So that's the difference. But I think, for us in the society, we do plan to collect statistics, and it would be very interesting for us too. How many vegans there are? How is that number growing? So that's something we are planning.
Thank you. I would also like to add a comment. Maybe it would be worth to do discussion how you did before, but in a small group on national television. Maybe inviting Colin Campbell to say his view on plant-based diet, because what you presented seemed really very extreme. And also, if you are saying that some children had some deficiencies, from the articles or doctors' point of views, it seemed like it wasn't just a deficiency, it was like a huge problem, like there were few around the world that vegan child died because parents tried to feed it like soya milk instead of breast milk. But did you have such cases in Estonia, or they just quoted something else?
Yeah, actually, the titles I showed there with the green. So all these very extreme titles where a vegan child died, like all of those are from other countries. So they've translated like some scandalous news stories from other countries. So we haven't had a case like that in Estonia, definitely. But yeah, like it is really important to sort of to counter these media representations, and I will give that presentation in a conference in Estonia in the Estonian language in November, and then we're also going to write about this. So really, kind of, we want to challenge the media representations, and there's something that I kind of thought that this, yeah, despite all this terrible negativity, and so like we can easily become quite demotivated or depressed, but maybe that's something that Stephen Weiss said in his sort of presentation. He said that when actually we've got some biased and irrational arguments that are about veganism that are out there, then he said that they are inherently unstable and they're not going to stay around for long. They can be quite easily challenged. So that's what we're really trying to do. So I'm thinking like it might be a good thing that maybe this is a very temporary stage we're at, like that this information is there, this very extreme things, but we can quite easily, I mean, in terms of logic, we can challenge them. I mean, the question is just, yeah, how to get people out of the echo chamber where they are sort of, you know, that's this thing that, you know, we don't believe that veganism is okay, particularly for children, and then we find evidence, so we argue that it's not okay, like how to kind of get them there, that they could think that it could be possible. Yeah.
A last comment from me, maybe it would be worth to translate some articles from America that now they advise doctors to include more plant-based diet because that's the healthiest. And also about milk, all vegans I know, they use their mother milks. I was breast feeding my daughter for about 4 years, so more than World Health Organization's advices, because they say 2 years or beyond. And recently, the director from my daughter's school told me, I don't know what you are doing, but I think this diet is working because your daughter had very good frequency. So she was at school most of the time, so all children were sick. She's 7 now, and I think she was at school the most often. And also other vegan children I know, they are also very healthy. But it's not only in Estonia. I meet also vegans who ask me, but can you have a vegan child? And I remember the biggest surprise which happened to me when I came for a conference in 2013. There was an animal rights activist here, and she also asked me, okay, I believe that adults can be vegan, but can you really have a vegan child? And yes, my daughter is 7. She has never had meat. And I think I consider her to be a healthy vegan, and I know many other vegan children, and they're all healthy and most of the time healthier than other children. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick comment, actually. Given this very negative attitude towards vegan parents and vegan children, like most vegans I know who have small children, when they go to the doctor, they actually don't say that their child is vegan, because they just feel that it's not safe to do that. Like they want the best for their child, and they think in these circumstances I can't say that. So I don't know, maybe even, yeah, if there's some statistic, there's a survey, maybe they would say for that purpose, but not in these encounters with doctors. So. And yeah, about you said that, yeah, kind of bringing experts from elsewhere and publishing articles, translating from the US, yeah, that's something we're doing. And also we always emphasize this American Academy of Dietetics and Nutrition, who really says that veganism is good at all stages of life. And we kind of feel like we're so tired of repeating it already, but I think it needs to be done over and over again.
Any more questions? If not, I have one. So starting with the seminal work by Chomsky in his book Manufacturing Consent. So newspapers and many media organizations make most of their money by advertisements and not by selling it on the street to somebody. Did you correlate sort of the negativity or the degree of moral panic with the amount of meat advertisement in those papers?
No, I didn't, but that would be something interesting to do. Like that's, would be important maybe to do, yeah.
So, yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
Thank you. So you were questioning the reason why these newspapers are addressing the health of children as opposed to the health of adults. And just the first reason I could think of was that children has more exposure to other, has more chance to socialize with their peers as opposed to adults, and a vegan children in an institution, an authoritarian institution like a school, would be a really bad apple because this child would be very keen to question the authority of the teachers and whatever the child is going to be taught at school. So that might be the primary reason why they are more concerned about not letting the children be exposed to these ideas. So what do you think about it?
I think definitely that could be. I mean, there's a question, of course, like how much children can really influence. The they don't have like money. They are not consumers in the sense that adults are. But I mean, definitely kind of spreading some ideas among other children in the kindergarten. That could be. There could be a reason. But generally, I think everything that relates to children, like some kind of practices. I mean, children are considered as a group who need really protection and who are innocent, and sort of some kind of imposing some kind of ideology on children is seen as extremely harmful and dangerous. Like we've had issues with that in Estonia regarding gender, for instance, introducing like some study materials in kindergartens that talk about kind of just challenge quite slightly some stereotypes related to boys and girls, and that caused an enormous scandal about 5 years ago. So I think it's also that reason, like whatever we do to children is kind of, it has a great weight, But I mean, what you said is also important.
That's exactly what I mean. Mm-hmm. I mean that all the reasons they are giving you might actually be the smoke screen, because you have this idea that the children are vulnerable and they have to be protected, but this also gives an instrument of intervening with for the state. It gives an instrument of intervening with people's lives. So it might just be a smoke screen just to be able to get more saying in other people's lives. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no. I think I do, more or less. But yeah, it's definitely that kind of that specious socialization that is going on now. Like it's kind of really important to maintain it, and to challenge it would be something that is seen quite as a big threat to our social order. So yeah, they are trying to avoid it by any means.
More questions or comments? But I don't think cats will undermine authority all that much. So if you draw that comparison. So thank you, Kadri, one more time.
Thank you.